I'd like to call the Thursday, October 12th, 2017 special meeting public work session to order. At this time, I'd like you to stand for a moment of silence and afterwards the Pledge of Allegiance by Dr. Whitaker. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, Dr. Whitaker, would you read the board's mission statement?
The mission of the Portsmouth Public School Division is to gauge all students in learning that will foster academic excellence and responsible citizenship.
Thank you very much. At this time, Madam Clerk, attendance, please.
Ms. Allen.
Present.
Ms. Atkinson.
Here.
Mrs. Hines.
Present.
Mr. Lamb.
Here.
Dr. Whitaker.
Here.
Mrs. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Parent.
Here.
7 members present, 2 members absent.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for October 12th. You've had an opportunity to review the agenda. What is the board's pleasure?
Move for approval. Second.
Motion's been made and second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Allen.
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hines.
Yes.
Mr. Lamb.
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Parent.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
At this time, Madam Vice President, we need to go into closed meeting. Would you read the,
Yes. I move that the board enter to a closed meeting on the provisions of Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the following purpose: consideration of a student disciplinary matters as permitted under subsection 8.2.
Move for second.
motion's been read and second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Madam Clerk?
Ms. Allen.
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hines.
Yes.
Mr. Lamb.
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Parent.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay.
That's how you feel it today.
The board is now in closed session. Thank you. The next item is 3.2, roll call vote, consideration of expulsion discipline case number 2017-18/04. The recommendation is expulsion. What is the board's pleasure?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Allen.
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hines.
Yes.
Mr. Lamb.
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Parent.
Yes. The next item is 3.3, consideration of expulsion discipline case number 2017-18/05. The recommendation is expulsion. What is the board's pleasure?
Move for approval.
Motion's
Second.
been made and
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Allen.
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hines.
Yes.
Mr. Lamb.
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Parent.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
The next item is 3.4, consideration of expulsion discipline case number 2017-1806. The recommendation is expulsion. What is the board's pleasure?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Allen.
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hines.
Yes.
Mr. Lamb.
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Parent.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. The next item is discussion, MWBE quarterly report. Dr. Bracy.
Mr. Parent. So with our quarterly report tonight with MWBE, Ms. Gwen Davis is here to share some information, give us some updates on where we are thus far.
Happy to do so. Chairman Parent, Vice Chair Williams, members of our school board, Dr. Bracy, Madam Clerk. administrative staff, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present the fourth quarterly Minority and Women Business Enterprise Report. The first slide, thank you, Dean, and this is my assistant, Dean Slack. The first slide, which we like to refer to as our fact check sheet, thanks to our public information officer, kind of gives background on how we got to where we are. In July 2010, the school board approved the study by MGT of America of a Minority and Women Business Enterprise disparity study. And basically, the study showed that women in minority businesses were underutilized in every area that we issue contracts in the school system. We issued $151.1 million in contracts, and women and minority-owned firms only received 1.6%. And this board saw that, acted unanimously and swiftly to implement a MWBE policy and then program. Thank you, sir. We've gone from, and I'm pleased to report this evening, 1.6% in 2010 to 15%. Unbelievable. It's a milestone. It's not above the 80% threshold. It's still below 80%, but it is certainly something worth celebrating. Women and minority-owned firms went from receiving 1%, 1% for women-owned firms, $1.5 million, to almost 8%. And minority-owned firms, which comprise Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, Indians, and other ethnic groups, they went from receiving 0.6% to receiving 7.1%. That is truly amazing. I'd like to kind of briefly go over the charts, and if you have any questions, let me know. The first chart is the MWBE, and it's Minority and Women Business Enterprise Utilization and Availability data, and it came from the disparity study. This has not changed in any of the reports that you've received since the program was implemented in 2013. Next. The next chart, Table 2, is the aspirational goals. These aspirational goals were set by the consultant, MGT of America, who's done about 122 studies across the country. These were set by them, and they have not changed. And the one that you see, this 22%, one woman-owned firm received that contract. It was like $789,000 for architectural engineering services out of Norfolk. And that's kind of high. So your policy says that you should establish aspirational goals and approve them on an annual basis. And that was not done, but it needs to be done, because these will change because your utilization and your availability of women and minority firms in your metropolitan statistical area do change. And so your data has to be statistically validated if anybody challenges your program. This board has adopted a program that nobody else has, and is needed everywhere because most localities' data mirrors the state. And at the state level, we work with a lot of women, minority and women business owners, and we looked at the disparity study results, and basically it showed the same thing as the city of Portsmouth. So we need to make sure that we keep the data updated, because if anybody challenges your program, then you could be, it could be detrimental to your program. So we are pleased to report that in a lot of those areas we're doing pretty good. Okay, this chart shows the utilization aspirational goal attainment, what we actually did in the fourth quarter. So on the construction prime level, I know there is no MWBE participation in the fourth quarter, but we had great participation in the first quarter. MWBE firms won 99% of the contracts that were issued by the school system. In the second and third quarter, they did fairly well too. On the construction subcontractor level, we haven't seen a lot of that because we haven't had a lot of prime contractors doing a lot of subbing, and we don't do construction in the schools. The city does that for us, so we don't see a lot in that area. So we might want to address that if the study's ever updated. Under professional services, women and minority firms receive 7% of the work, and that's the area where we know it's up a little too high. But a women-owned firm received the 15,650, 54. Non-professional services, our MWBEs receive 5%, and it's in a number of different areas, both women-owned and minority-owned businesses. For goods and supplies, the same. It's up, and that's an area that we usually do fairly well in, and is at 12%, and the aspirational goal established was 15. So overall, it's women and minority-owned firms receive 8% of the contracts that were issued by Portsmouth Public Schools. Okay, Table 5. Thank you, sir. This table shows the utilization and procurements in the Portsmouth metropolitan statistical area, and that comprises 10 cities and 7 counties. It basically shows how we did in our market. And thanks to IT, we're able to look at all the checks that are cut by the school system for all the work, and we can see from what he pulls up in our MSA how much we actually received. And for example, your professional services, we received 28%, glasses, 28% in the market area. That means 28% of the $227,000 was spent in the Hampton Roads MSA, and of that amount, we MWBEs received. I can't see without these glasses on. Received. I can't say that number.
15.
Thank you, 37%. And so it's the same in all of these different categories that you see. We have done fairly well in terms of what was actually spent in the market on the non-professional services and goods and supplies. Division-wide utilization. This chart basically shows what was spent by our schools and our administration. And programs like this do not work well unless the leadership says that this is what they want to do. And the Portsmouth School Board has made it clear that this is something that needs to be done because we don't want to discriminate against any business that wants to do business with our school system. And Dr. Bracy leads the way. I mean, he's been leading the way for a long time, which is a good thing. And 19% in our high schools, they tied with you this quarter, Dr. Bracy, at 19% as well. We are also training our buyers in the schools because the MWBE program policy has guidelines for them to follow. And they're not stringent guidelines. They're just, you know, if it's under a certain amount, you don't have to get a quote, but we encourage you to use vendors, you know, to not use the same company every time, because you may have gotten some vendors in your area that are doing extremely well that you just have never given an opportunity to. And then when it's over $15,000, then we ask you to get 3 quotes in our schools, and one has to be an MWBE vendor. And I've been receiving lots of phone calls since we did the training with all of the bookkeepers. If they don't know, if they can't seem to find one on the list that they have, I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll make sure that they do have the information.
Go back to, I'm looking at curriculum and instruction at 3%. That's because?
That's because women and minority businesses did not receive those. You did not receive the contract. The contracts went to firms that were not non-minority. So,
Is it that they're not trying, or
Were
what?
there vendors available for those?
there are vendors available, and what has happened historically, women and minority vendors have submitted bid after bid after bid to localities, and they've never received the work, and they've submitted them to the state, and they don't receive the work. So they get discouraged and they don't submit bids. So what we're trying to do in training them is to make sure that they qualify for our program. Our program says you've got to have your certification by the state. That's how we vet you. We make sure that you're legitimate. And so we're certifying them. We even asked the state could we become a certification station? And they were like, but you don't need to, because we'll come and help you. Well, okay, as long as we know we can get our people certified if
Right.
they need to be certified.
Right. But I mean, I guess I'm confused about it. Is that they didn't get it because their bid was high?
Could have been. It could have been that.
I mean, you're saying they're not getting them, and I just need to know, why aren't they getting them? The only other reason I could think of is that the other bids were lower and they were the higher bid.
In some cases, yes, sir.
But what would be another reason that they wouldn't get the bid?
I have.
Or they weren't certified?
Yeah, I mean, to qualify, you don't have to be certified to get
Is that right?
bids in the school system or to get work for the state. But to be counted in our program, you have to be certified.
Well, I was going to address another issue, and that is with curriculum and instruction, some of the materials that we specifically look for, that Dr. Nguyen specifically recommends, may not be materials that can be provided by those particular firms. And so that's kind of what's going on. Because I remember in the past when we've had to, vote on those contracts.
Right.
Yeah.
And not only that, a lot of curriculum and instruction materials are sole source.
Yeah.
Meaning that I invented it, I'm the only one that can sell it to you, and you've got to buy it from me if you want it for your children. So that happens a lot in that area.
Also, if I may, these are actually payments to vendors. They may be contracts that are existing contracts, so don't think of these as new contracts that are been awarded for this particular report. I just want to make sure that.
Right.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay. Next slide. Okay. This is a table which shows how MWBEs responded to the solicitations that we post on eVirginia. And what we started, because we were a little concerned initially when we saw these numbers so low, we started what's called Portsmouth Public Schools bid alerts. And we've been notified minority and women-owned businesses across in our MSA. Because there's so many in a lot of categories, and we just want to make sure that you know about them. So once one of our buyers goes to post the solicitation, we started in May contacting the MWBEs in our area. They're so excited that you all care so much about them. It is wonderful and it's refreshing. And they're beginning to, we see the numbers increase of people attending our pre-bid meetings. And that's where we go over all of the requirements of the MWBE program, and we offer assistance to prime vendors. And it's a great place for subcontractors to come and meet the primes, because we set aspirational goals for every last one of those projects. I set the goals with the buyers, and then we put it in the solicitations, and everybody tries to meet them. It's not mandatory, because aspirational goal is just that, it's aspirational. But we encourage you to work with women and minority vendors, and people don't seem to have a problem doing it.
Well, we've done a good job with pressure washing
Yes, sir.
and painting. Those are the two.
Yes, sir. We did good. We did good. We had, I think, for painting services, we had two minority vendors and one SWAM vendor, a small vendor, and for painting, pressure washing, we had 3 vendors too. It was 3 and 3.
That's good.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? And it could be this page or the next page. But when we look at the number of MWBE respondents, is it the fact that there's nobody available to do that work? Or I just want clarification, the fact that, because I hate to see an aspirational goal and we keep falling below the line. And I want to know why, are we falling below the line because there's no MWBE that provides that service? So we're asking, you can't get water from a rock.
Right. But
If we keep hammering it and there's nothing there that, if there's no MWBE service there to provide that for us, then can we shift focus? Or, because we can't make companies pop up. We can give them, let them know that we can take them in their business, but when we look at this, respondents, so if we have nobody that responded in certain categories, is it the fact that they're not certified, or is it the fact that they just don't exist in our economy?
Oh, they exist in our economy. That's what the
Okay.
disparity study clearly showed.
Okay.
We have more than enough people. If we went back to the first slide, where you see the availability is at 56%,
Okay,
you got more than enough vendors. I mean, the state studies showed the exact same thing.
okay,
There is no, it's just that they are not accustomed in a lot of cases of submitting these bids to local governments because they haven't won them. And when you have 0 to 25 employees, you don't have time to submit, to keep doing
Right.
bids and not win them. I know because I was a small business owner, and it really,
It's tough.
yes, sir. It takes like 4 days to put together a bid package, and then we require that you give us 10 copies. That means you at Office Max, running 10 copies, and you try to want them to look nice, especially if you're doing professional services work or any kind of work,
Right.
and it's expensive.
and you're putting out money that you're not guaranteed you're going to get back.
Exactly. And 9 times out of 10 in the past, before you all implemented this program, they were not. They were not getting it.
And then if they don't get the bid, then they just say, what's the
Exactly. Why should I get certified?
Right.
And so now they're not ready to bid even if they could do the work.
Right.
So we're trying to make sure that they are certified because women and minority firms are the fastest growing business segment in the country and in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know if you're going to touch on it or not, but is there any data that shows what businesses in the city of Portsmouth are they bidding or are they getting any work? Is there any data to kind of touch on that?
Yes,
Just
ma'am.
Portsmouth businesses.
Yes, ma'am. Our CFO required us to report that to you.
Oh,
So she did. And so Dean was kind enough to go through, I can look at all the purchasing contracts and because that's in your report. You can see clearly who won the bid and what city they were from.
There it is.
In this quarter, we had one minority-owned firm that won a contract, and that was the one that the city released for us for landscaping services, and that was Claus Lawn Care on County Street. We had, we also do the credit card purchases, and we had 161 credit card purchases. I got to get used to wearing these glasses.
Oh, I know that.
Yes, sir. We had 161 credit card purchases that were made in the Hampton Roads MSA. Okay, and they total $257,039.50. He does it down to the penny, right, for us. 38 purchases, or 24%, were made with Portsmouth businesses, and 2 of the 38 were MWBs.
Well, at least Claude's Lawn Care. I mean, come on.
Got to be on Facebook. That is your business.
Oh, you got me. Dr. Whitaker?
Just one more point about like why the bids may be low in some cases. What we're trying to do now is move towards debundling bids. So, for example, with the transportation company for homeless or special need or homeless students. One of the reasons that I believe this was the case that minority firms weren't bidding
Right.
at one point was because the contract was bundled, so you had to have special needs vehicles along with regular vehicles.
Right.
So when you debundle things, you get more participation because they may not have the special needs equipment, but they may have the other
Right.
vehicles available. So that's something that we're trying to really work on with the bids.
And question for finance and staff, have we worked with the economic development here in Portsmouth? Because they do offer grants and they do currently solicit businesses to come here. And so if it could be something that maybe we work with economic development or partner with them so that as we onboard new businesses that come in, if they are a service or if they are something that we look for and that we're go ahead and getting that connection as well. And they just have a new economic director, so I just thought maybe since they're trying to build their business capacity within Portsmouth, I mean, I would like to spend my Portsmouth tax dollars in Portsmouth and, lessen my tax burden a little bit. But if we can partner to build that and build capacity within our city, that might be something worth investigating.
Happy to do that, and as a matter of fact, called all of our colleagues in the different cities, and we are looking at, and I spoke to Dr. Bracy about it, maybe making sure that the training that we provide for these businesses through economic development and all the grants and things that they offer, and purchasing, we want to kind of team up and make sure we don't duplicate
Right.
training efforts and things like that. So we're working on that.
Okay.
Great idea. Thank you. Okay. And the last one, I think, okay, last two tables. This is just what eVirginia is, the state's electronic procurement system. They send us back reports on how many people they actually notified. You don't have to be SWAM certified to bid on jobs, but to count you in our program, you have to be. So this is just a listing of, what they did. And what we do, we've added the PPS bid alerts for people in our area. And we always look for our Portsmouth businesses first. And we're reaching out to them and contacting them to see if, if they need anything. Quite a few have been in my office to sit down and talk about how they can do business with Portsmouth Public Schools. We're happy to show them how. And the last one, of course, is what the city issued on our behalf, and that's always included in your report. And that concludes my presentation.
Could you what was the number that you said 24% was in Portsmouth, and what was the?
It was 38 purchases, which represented 24% of the total spend, which was the $257,039.50. And we had 2 of the 38 businesses, which means that they're not SWAM. They're probably small businesses, which are white male-owned businesses that probably receive the contract. Because if it's woman-owned, it's going to show up.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had the figures correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions from board members?
Thank you, Gwen.
It's not specifically for Gwen. It's talking about Claude's Lawn Care, and I know it's not your business, but you threw it out there. I did want to state as we drive around the city, I'm going to say that our yards look better.
Yes.
We have mulch. We have lined flower beds. We have edging that's happening.
Yes.
We have tree trimming that's happening. And Claude, thank you. That's all I'm going to say is whoever Claude on
I
County
try to do
Street
my
is.
best. I just.
But I wasn't here in the end of September to say that, but
I'll have to go meet Claude.
Yes. So I'm just gonna say, after 2 years of talking about our yards, I'd like to say they look pretty good right now.
Good job, Mrs. Williams.
And before you go,
Ms. Davis,
Ms. Davis,
we have a question.
I knew you're trying to get out, but thank you so much for a very thorough
Yes.
report.
Yes.
And I can tell that it is an asset that Portsmouth Public Schools engage your services.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
My boss is here too.
Is this your boss?
The new
Okay.
The purchasing.
Purchasing. Oh, you're
Can you
introduced him at the last? Oh, yes, okay.
He's very supportive of what we're trying to do.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Introduction.
All right. Next item on the agenda is consideration of a qualified zone academy QZAB bond resolution. Dr. Whitaker and I think Ms. Storch is going to handle this. Are you going to?
I was like, man, you're on point tonight.
I'm just promoted.
That may not be right.
I was trying to say,
Dr. Bracy, I think you're going to handle it.
I was like, this will
Ms.
be
Storch might handle it.
Ms. Dorothy is going to share.
Oh, y'all with us too much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chairman
Good
Beard,
evening.
Vice Chair Williams, school board members. The resolution that is before you is for the qualified zone academy bonds that the city is looking to pursue in order to fund capital projects for the school system. As part of the application, they have to have a resolution passed by the school board just giving them authority to pursue these bonds.
Is
Ms. Hines? Mrs. Hines?
yes. All right, I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay. I know 2 retreats ago we voted on QZAB. Is this in addition to, or is this new?
This is in addition to, but this is also new. So on top of the 6 million, this is additional 4 million.
And can you put this in non-purchasing terms? What is this for?
All the way down to the end
So,
of,
so the city is going to issue debt, and it's 0 interest, and they're going to receive funds to then be able to fund the projects in attachment B, which is the Churchland High School stage, sound, and lighting renovations, Hodges Manor rooftop unit replacement, Churchland Middle School restroom renovations, and interactive whiteboards, which was part of the reappropriation process.
Is this new interactive whiteboards?
No, these are the same ones.
because you had to apply for it, which we did. We had to apply for the grant. So,
Just so I'm clear, the reappropriation for the whiteboards, now we're asking for those not to be paid out the reappropriation, but now through QZAB?
correct.
So the city did not reappropriate the funds for the interactive boards because they're going to issue QZAB bonds to pay for it.
And the only way to complete, my understanding at the finance meeting, the only way to complete this application is that the board has to pass this resolution. You have to have a resolution attached to the grant. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So this doesn't stop our schools from having the interactive boards because they've already been installed. So this doesn't interrupt anything that's happening in the classroom.
It's just a different method to pay for things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that was explained to us before.
Right.
Which we,
It was.
I heard it before.
Yeah. Yeah, our main concern was to keep the interactive boards.
Right.
And the city wanted to look at ways where it wouldn't have to be cash,
Right.
a cash purchase. You know, it could be financed through QZAB. So we didn't have any problem with that. You know, like I said, our purpose was we just wanted to make sure that we could keep it. So we worked together to put that in place.
It's like why pay cash for something that you can borrow at zero interest? And that's what the city's position was, and we said, that's great, yes.
And we've communicated this with the vendor, so when we go back to purchase items in the future, they're not looking at us like we haven't paid our bill on time, quote unquote.
No, there shouldn't be any interruption with
Okay.
We just have to pass a resolution, because if we don't, then we can't
Okay.
go forward. All right, any discussion? All right,
Move for approval.
getting ready. Move for approval, second, any discussion? Hearing no more discussion, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Parent?
Yes,
It's unanimous.
thank you. Consideration of contract RFP 911P 1617 for occupational and related therapy services. Dr. Bracy.
Yes. Ms. Storch, would you continue?
George?
This purchase is for the school system to contract with 6 occupational therapy and speech services companies to provide services for our special needs population. The estimated cost of these contracts would be about $700,000 a year. This is an estimate because it's based on the needs of the students, but this is a historical look back for the last 2 years of where our costs have been.
I have a question for Dr. Beckdahl. If a child's IEP requires for OT or PT, then we are required to provide those services. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And if we don't provide those services, then we're out of compliance with that IEP.
Yeah, there would not be, yes. We would never not provide it.
And at one time, I think Maryview was getting a lot of the We had a contract with Maryview and one other years ago. So this is good that we're expanding. Okay. Any other questions from board members? Yes, Ms. Hines.
Have we looked at hiring staff rather than contracting it out?
Years ago.
Just to throw it out there.
Yeah, years ago we did. I mean, way back we did. And then it, go ahead, Dr. Bechtel.
We have a couple.
That's what I
but
thought.
It's not enough, so
Okay.
we have to use contractors
Okay.
to cover the needs of the students.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought we did, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
We pretty much keep it posted, but we don't get interest. We don't get,
So it's a hard to staff situation.
very hard to say.
Okay.
And you have to provide it, Ms. Williams.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know my daughter's a speech pathologist, but they really, she doesn't want to do schoolwork. She works for Centera because the pay is just.
The pay is.
So you have to probably do the contracts, but it's just hard staffing them because of
It
the difference in
Okay.
All right, what is the board's pleasure?
Move for approval.
Motion's been made
Second.
and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Howland,
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson,
Yes.
Mrs. Hines,
Yes.
Ms. Lamb,
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Parent.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is review of October 26th, and you know that's going to be at Hodges Manor. Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, I did that on purpose, too. No, I didn't.
looks like a new policy
Review and revise of school board policy. I read them all afternoon. Whoa, Dr. Bracy.
Okay.
I read them all afternoon.
Yeah, the policy committee recently convened with Dr. Cromartie, and he's going to give an update on those policies that were shared.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Bracy. Ms. Allen, Reverend Fleming, and I met at length on the 19th of September to review policies that had
I'm sure y'all
accumulated.
had fun.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. And pretty much they are VSBA recommended amendments. We adopted a new practice this round, not policy, but practice, of sending the policies to the departments which they pertain to, soliciting their input. Having received no input from those folks, we recommended that policies be approved as amended or recommended by VSBA. There is one that I would like to draw your attention to, and that's policy KF pertaining to distribution of information and materials through Portsmouth Public Schools mediums. In order to have, I don't want to say better governance, I don't know if there's a better way of saying it, but in order to have a system set up in place where we only promote and advertise things that support our mission, we've done some modifications to policy KF. And I'd like to read the policy as it existed first, and then read it with the proposed amendments to illustrate what it is we're hoping to be able to do. The division superintendent or his or her designee must approve in advance any materials sought to be distributed or made available via Portsmouth Public Schools distribution channels by non-school organizations, including parent-teacher organizations, booster clubs, and governmental organizations. Approval will be granted only for materials regarding activities related to the educational mission of the Portsmouth Public School Division. That's the original language. Suggested language. The division superintendent or his or her designee must approve in advance any materials sought to be distributed or made available via Portsmouth Public Schools distribution channels by any school group or school organizations. We've stricken the language about non-school organizations, including PTA and governmental organizations, and replaced it with two statements. One says, approval will not be granted to any community organizations. Approval will be granted only for materials from these governmental organizations, the Portsmouth Library and the Portsmouth Parks and Recreation Department, regarding activities related to the educational mission of the Portsmouth School Division. And we think that that gives us, it certainly provides greater clarity of what types of organizations can advertise and what type of organizations we will disseminate information for in our public schools.
That's good.
Dr. Kamar.
Yes, ma'am.
Dickerson?
Thank you, Chairman. I guess I don't want to be crazy, but so civic leagues aren't allowed to advertise in the school system. Is that what that's blacking out like the civic leagues from advertising in the schools?
Yes, ma'am. This policy, as suggested, only promotes us disseminating information from organizations that are aligned with the educational mission of the school division.
And the reason
Yes, ma'am.
I guess it's kind of like a catch-22 because we do have some civic leagues in Portsmouth that support the school system by providing scholarships. So we saying, hey, you can raise money for the schools, but hey, y'all can't advertise in our school system. So I guess that language is kind of unfair in a way.
Doesn't it clarify that as long as it's along with, I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. I just want to make sure you were.
It's just what it does.
Go right ahead.
But doesn't the language clear, it states as long as it's along with our mission.
Right.
So the mission, of course, we promote education. If they're doing something that's going to provide scholarships, then that's something, but we shouldn't be having them saying, hey, we having a boat cruise. We just having a boat cruise.
Right.
Not a boat cruise.
Go ahead. Oh, you finished, Ms. Allen.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say it.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not necessarily. You're right. If it's on the lines of education and if they're providing like a resource, like I said, some civic leagues have soccer programs. Some of them have mentor programs. I don't want to restrict them from being able to solicit kids from the schools with that.
Okay. Ms. Williams?
I kind of think that we get into a kind of a gray area and a slippery slope when we determine what organization, because everybody can make their group to fit whatever purpose or cause that they want for that particular event. And I think I brought to Dr. Bracey's attention last year where it was one of the schools doing Black History Month. They had bought in these booklets and sent them home with the kids. And I called them because it was on Facebook. And then they were promoting this funeral home. I mean, it was like advertising. Did you see that? Yeah. And I called Dr. Bracey and I said, because as long as I've been on the board, we could not ever disseminate any information for any particular group, because then you open it up to the freedom of speech with other different groups that saying you allow the NAACP to do this, but you don't allow the KKK to do this. It's all about freedom of speech. And then some people will use it, like you said, they will use it to promote themselves. So to me, I think to be on the safe side where we don't get into a lot of legality is to kind of keep it on the mission of education. Because, I mean, when Dr. Bracey called the teacher in the school about it, I mean, they said they've been doing it like for a couple of years. And I know the other funeral homes here, they were not pleased when they saw it on Facebook, but they were doing it in a very kind of slick way, saying it was Black history, but the schools, the principals should know better than that, than to allow them to disseminate stuff like that. But that particular teacher said not to worry, she was already retiring, so she didn't really care what we said. So I think we have to be pretty, whatever.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. So just to be clear, and just to piggyback, if a civic league or other organization can disseminate material as long as it's educational.
Right, I'm going to read
And
it.
on the principles, align with the principles of Portsmouth Public Schools.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Could you read it one last time?
Right.
I will. Would you like me to read
Yeah, and can we get a copy of that? Because the copy that we have in ours is not the copy that you're reading from.
Right. I
Okay.
received the copy that I'm reading from today, and we'll share that with you through Dr. Bracey or Ms. Chambers. The new language, the division superintendent or his or her designee must approve in advance any material sought to be distributed or made available via Portsmouth Public Schools distribution channels by any groups or school organizations. Approval will not be granted for any community organizations. Approval will be granted only for materials from these governmental organizations, the Portsmouth Library and the Portsmouth Parks and Recreation Department, regarding activities related to the educational mission of the Portsmouth Public School Division.
I'm sorry,
That's
one
it.
more
Go ahead.
question. Governmental organizations. Do we need to elaborate on governmental organizations?
Well, they're city-affiliated organizations, the public libraries and the Department of Parks and Recreation. Those are city-affiliated government organizations. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So, and then Mr. Lamb.
So said Civic League could disseminate their information to the Portsmouth
city.
Parks and Rec,
Right.
and then they could disseminate that information to us.
Right.
No.
I don't think that's aligned with the
No.
spirit of the policy proposal.
If
it's
they
a
actually,
government.
if they're partnership and type of, because you just said governmental
Governmental,
agencies
that's what I'm saying.
can. But if I'm a civic league and I say, hey, I'm starting a soccer league,
Right.
and I'd like to get some children,
They could
and
go
the
through
city of
Parks and
Portsmouth
Rec.
put that on their Parks and Rec flyer thing,
Sure.
that then could be given.
As a government.
No.
Oh, don't ask me, ma'am.
No, I do
Because
see
it
your
would
point.
be,
According to this policy,
It's
can't do
government.
it. Can't do
help
it.
me out, attorney. Is that
Well,
not the case?
I haven't
Is that
seen,
not what you're saying?
the language I saw is not the language here. The language I saw, I believe, is what Dr. Cromartie is reading, but I don't have it in front of me.
You got a copy
And,
of that?
and the, well, that, just even if I had it in front of me, we've had several email exchanges about this policy, about how it would work and how it would be implemented. And so I don't know that I'm in a position to offer you a whole lot of guidance on it, to be totally candid, because I'm just not sure anything is very, well, I worried about the definition of things here. I didn't know what a school organization was, what a school group was, what a governmental organization is. I didn't know what that was. I'm not worried about the principles of the distribution is your decision. Interpreting it becomes my problem. And I was having some trouble interpreting what would be applicable, what would the Churchland High School band parents be an affiliated organization or a school organization that could disseminate information while the maybe the Boy Scouts couldn't.
Right.
So my concern was I could not get to the base of who could use it and who couldn't use it. But what I understand here is outside groups cannot use it. Governmental organizations, there's two exceptions, and school groups can. School groups and governmental organizations.
And I guess
Go ahead.
the confusion comes in with the governmental organizations. So that needs to be stricken. And what it would say is that no organizations can provide the information. Because I think that's where the concern comes in. And as you say, you don't want someone to try to loop around and use a governmental agency to provide any documentation. Because the main thing that we were concerned about and trying to prohibit was anyone on the outside bringing something in. So really, that should be stricken. So there's no outside organizations. And that'll take away any gray area that may be there.
So let me understand. I'm looking at KF, which says distribution of information / materials. And I'm looking at the division superintendent or his/her designee must approve in advance any material sought to be distributed or made available via Portsmouth Public Schools distribution channels by non-school organizations, including parent-teacher association, booster clubs, and governmental organizations. Approval will be granted only for materials, and then you've taken from governmental organizations, you've taken that out, regarding activities relating to the education mission of the Portsmouth Public Schools. Now, are you saying we're going to take "and governmental organizations" out now?
Yes.
In the blue? I mean, you've already taken it out there, but there it is again.
So it shouldn't have been there again because it was already taken out.
Right.
Yeah, so, right. So that comes out and governmental.
And governmental, okay. I just want to make sure.
Yes.
The board,
That's
does everybody understand that when you look at, yes?
I understand. I guess I just wanted clarity because now that we're taking out of governmental organizations, then if the city has to disseminate something to the school system, the city would be classified under a governmental organization. So they wouldn't be able to disseminate information in the schools.
But you name them.
For what the
The
government does.
governmental
They don't belong to
agency,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Strike.
So we're
It's only for schools.
So we're
School stuff.
blocking the city. I'm just thinking of if the city has a school-based program, we wouldn't be able to disseminate the information.
Well, have we ever? Just trying to figure. Because we never had Peach Jar before, but did we ever?
I'm thinking of the 66.
But that's Parks and Rec, right? And that falls under,
governmental.
Other than,
but that falls under the two that we were going to allow, correct? Parks and Rec and the library.
Rec in the public library.
Because the only two, the way I'm hearing it and understanding it, is the only two that we're going to allow in is Parks and Rec and the library. Everybody else is out.
That's right.
So as long as it comes through Parks and Rec, then it's should be child oriented.
right?
So that would cover 6 to
And that's
6.
probably related to programs, they're already in the schools.
Yeah, that's what she was.
Right there in the school.
Yeah.
So that's school related.
Yeah, that's right.
So
So
back-
it wouldn't,
Well, what I was initially saying, because anything that comes out of Parks and Rec or the library has the city logo on it. So they are saying we're sanctioning this. So since they're safe sanctioning it and giving it to us, we should be safe sanctioning it because they sanctioned it.
but the programs that they're in the division working with, there's a MOU.
So say for instance, the library is having
Lego Fest.
some sort of event that's educational. We wouldn't want to encourage, like even with when we're doing our board member comments, and we might say, oh, the Portsmouth Public Library is having a STEM search program, come meet Katherine Johnson. You're now saying that we can't do that because that is not, that's coming from a governmental agency.
It'd be the same thing if,
But that's educational.
well, the Virginia Pilot does a spelling bee, which is educational.
Right.
But we're not opening it. Right, we're not doing it.
Do we send our kids to it?
Yes.
We have some students that participate in it.
So then now we're not promoting that our students are at the spelling bee.
That's what I was
think
saying.
they do promote it.
But
But
we
it
couldn't
doesn't-
promote it.
I think the teachers or the school promotes it with those kids that are going or whatever, but because everybody doesn't do a spelling bee. So the teachers or whomever will promote it with those students that they have targeted. That wouldn't be anything that would go out
To the whole.
to the whole community anyway, because, everybody can't go to the spelling bee. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Dr. Whitaker and then Ms. Hall.
Well, doesn't the superintendent, based on this language, still have the discretion, to approve whatever comes through?
That's what,
Yeah,
that's what it
so it
says.
doesn't, it's just the automatic approvals that are
Right.
at
That was the
question.
It was in place with Peace Jar,
Right.
which is what brought us here.
Yeah.
Because anyone could just send it in and it
put
would go out.
Right. Because that says the division superintendent or his/her designee must approve. So, okay, so
Well, I'm grateful because I know we caught a lot of flack when the circus came to town, and the circus got, sent free tickets home with every child, and then I have parents calling and, just because I got a free ticket doesn't mean I can take the rest of the family. There's 6 of us in the family. So I appreciate the fact that we were trying to limit access, and I do agree that Parks and Rec and the library are the 2 safe places, to come, especially from the city, because they are generally education and child centered. I would just like to see, because my comprehension of memory, seeing versus heard is not great. So I would just like to see a copy of it, please.
So at our October 26th, and I know that you all are going to make sure that you read every one of these policies. We're going to be voting on these policies on the 26th, okay? Any further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lamb.
I mean, I clearly understand what's trying to take place. I mean, we're trying to prevent this flyer, that flyer for this, that, and everything else get put into teachers' mailboxes and sent home. And I think the operative part of the wording is educational purposes with that. So even though we are saying no groups except for governmental organizations such as the two, there is still that part about discretion left up to you, so that would include, say, PTA or so forth. My question now comes to legal. With this being a new policy and we move forward, then this would cover from here forward. But let's say now in the past when we have allowed, maybe unbeknownst to us or whatever, you've had the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, or this group or that group that has done things, can they come back and shout foul because of freedom of speech or access? Because there is the understanding that once, and maybe this is more with social organizations, but once you allow for one group access into the schools, be it an organizationally or material, then the ability to allow access for all groups. How does that, is that a misunderstanding of this or not?
I can't say that there would not be any circumstance where someone would not cry foul. I think the advantage you have to this particular policy, as I just reviewed, I was given a copy of it, is that you have more eliminated that concern than you have added to it.
Okay.
Because you have now narrowed the available users on a non-arbitrary basis. There's nothing arbitrary about this. We'll let two governmental entities and the school divisions use this item. And so that's basically eliminating everybody else. And so I think that eliminates the issue where you run into trouble theoretically, and I think it's more theoretical than practical, but where you run into theoretical trouble is if, as you pointed out, I have two organizations that are similarly situated, maybe with different sides of philosophies, and I let one philosophy come through and I don't let the other come through.
Right.
That's a problem. But I don't see that in this policy.
Okay.
Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is a review of the October 26th. Dr. Bracy.
For the October 26th meeting, we have Mr. Parent, I think you were going to get into on the next item was the Hodges Manor Elementary School. We'll be visiting Hodges Manor in a couple of weeks.
Right.
And at that meeting, Dr. Whitaker will read the mission statement, the school board mission statement, followed by attendance, roll call, and then we'll have our discussion by Ian, our student representative. Followed by that, we'll have our curriculum and instruction report from Dr. Wynn. I believe we have a student that will be sharing his experience from the Jason Learning that he did. He was one of the Argonauts that traveled for a week. So he's going to come and share that report with us. We'll have, as far as presentation, the VSBA academic awards to our school board members. We'll also have the VEA, the new VEA representative, Mr. King Salam Khalfani. He will come to give an introduction so that everyone will know exactly who he is. He's replacing Gil Pittman, who retired. We'll have a roll call vote on the consideration of the resolution recognizing American Education Week, which runs from November 13th through 17th. We will award our schools that receive full accreditation this year. The new schools, James Hurst, Lakeview, Parkview Elementary, and IC Norcom High School, will receive their banners to be posted in their schools. We'll also have a bully prevention monthly activity report. Of course, you know, this is our Bullying Awareness Month. Dr. Cromartie will provide an update on that report. Also, will share activities that are taking place within our schools. I think a lot of you may have seen some of them through social media, what the different schools are doing, different contests and programs. He will share that information. We're also anticipating, I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, Michaela, our former school board representative, possibly coming back and sharing some of the activities that she's done. I think she was supposed to do something within one of the schools as well this month, with her trying to juggle that in her college schedule. Approval of the minutes for September 7th and the 21st. Public comment, non-agenda and board items. Human Resources and Operations Report, Mr. Ziegler, and our transaction report for approval. We also have our roll call vote for the financial report for September. And right now we have a placeholder. We may have a contract that we will have that we may need to have you vote on. Followed by my report and the roll call vote for consideration of the school board policies and board members' comments and concerns, and then adjournment.
Thank you, Dr. Bracy. At this time, board members' reports. Any board members have any reports?
This goes under comments and concerns too?
Yes.
Okay. Because we've got reports and then we've got subcommittee reports, and I don't see a spot for concerns or questions, so I don't want to be out of turn.
No, that's fine.
Okay. The first question I have is for Dr. Ziegler in transportation, and it's going to go back to the student that we had with the substitute bus driver and trying to cross Portsmouth Boulevard. Can you talk about further bus driver training or anything that's happened since then because of that?
Yes, that driver was a brand new driver. Unfortunately, it was his first week on the job and maybe his second or third route for that. The precipitating factor on that was he did the route backwards. And so the students are used to, at that age, getting off. I get off at the second stop, I get off at the third stop. So because he went in reverse order, the student in question got off at the second stop, which is where she normally got off, and it turned out to be the wrong stop. So he was removed from the road, and he was told, and we ordered retraining for him with the safety officer. So he would not be allowed to drive again until he retook his road test, which he did and passed. And we've also made sure that the schools are giving route sheets. We send to the schools route sheets for sub-drivers. We're making sure the drivers get the route sheet and they follow it. And we're ending, it may take a while to catch on with our sub-drivers, but we're insisting that the sub-drivers follow the route sheet rather than follow the directions of the kids, because that happens, not just here, that happens in probably every school division. Sub-driver says, well, where's the first stop? And the kids direct and sometimes play, and we're making sure that that doesn't happen, that they follow the route as published.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I don't want to.
No.
Okay. The next thing I've had a few comments about standing for pledge, about can we make students stand for pledge? Can we make staff stand for pledge? What is the policy? What is our answer to that? Because politics aside, I want to know what it is that we can and can't do for our students, and what it is that we can and can't do for staff.
Mr. Meekins?
I'm sorry, I was talking to some. I was looking at the agenda, trying to figure where we were
No,
on
you're
the
good.
agenda.
I've had a few concerns come to me about parents, whether, the school or the teacher wants their the child to stand for the pledge, and the parent
Oh, the
doesn't want to push
pledge.
that, or, students not standing. Some of mine have come from military, we have a lot of military families here, and so what my question is, all politics aside, what is the legal code? What is where do we stand as a school system as to what we can require our students to do, and what can we require our staff to do? As adults.
Thank you for that question.
You're welcome. As adults, but then also, what do we expect the adults to do? Say, or for the children as well. So,
Well, I don't know how deep you want me to get into this answer, because this is really a very complicated question. The only reason it matters to us at all is we are deemed under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, which makes the first applicable to the states, a state actor. The right to free speech and all that stuff only applies to governments. Only a government is prohibited from preventing free speech and so forth. It's not an individual problem. So we do fall under state actor definitions. There was a 1943 Supreme Court decision that said that, in effect, that you could not require a student in class to pledge allegiance.
Okay.
The primary basis for that was at that time religion. The child was of a religion that did not believe in symbols, and the flag was deemed to be a symbol, as was the act of pledging allegiance. But it has been expanded even to making children stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. In Virginia Code Section 22.1202, the General Assembly directed the Board of Education to establish a policy on this. There's a policy that has been provided, the Board of Education guidelines on the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. And that policy says that a student is not required to stand. They may sit, but there's also a disruption element. They cannot be deemed to be disrupting the service. Other people have a right to pledge allegiance as they see fit. And so retaining the right to not let them act out on the one hand, but on the other, they have an absolute right under under Board of Education regulations to not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ms. Atkinson?
That's in a school setting.
And Dr. Bracy, can that be emailed out to administration and staff, because there was a recent incident in another state where a teacher actually assaulted a child for not standing up for the flag. So I think it would be a good thing to communicate that out to the staff so they would know that.
Yes, definitely do that.
Second part of the question.
Sure.
What is the school division's directive for the adults, for the employees? Do the teachers have to say it? Do the teachers, does the same rule still apply for the adults? Because, I understand we're acting as in local parentis and as a government agency. So what's the rule for the adults?
I haven't researched that as deeply, but I believe that there is a requirement under the history requirement and government civics requirement that the school divisions throughout Virginia teach and require the learning of the Pledge of Allegiance, and that this Pledge of Allegiance will take place in the school division every day. I believe that. I don't have it at my hands.
I guess
I would think if the teacher in the classroom did not do it, then the teacher would be in violation of the educational policies as a teacher. But I'm not sure that you could hang your hat on that. As to outsiders, parents, we have no control over that.
But I thought your question was, did they have to stand? Is that
Oh,
what you
I just want clarification on what the expectations of students are, what we can expect them to do and not to do, and then also what can we expect our teachers to do? Do our teachers have to say it? Do they have an option to not say it? Because the last thing I want is for somebody to say, you have to do it, you have to do it, you have to do it, and make a carte blanche statement, and we're out of compliance. So my issue is, now I understand we can't make students do it, but they can't be a disruption. So what about the teachers and the adults in the building? Can we make them do it, or do they get the same privilege as the students?
I don't
Is that
know.
clear as mud?
Well, I will be giving you an opinion without a precedent. I don't know that I have a precedent in front of me that deals with the teacher. I would suspect that a teacher in the school division, if they are the classroom teacher responsible for teaching that subject, that would be part of the curriculum, and they would be required to do it. If they're not part of that subject, then I don't believe they'd be in any different standing than any other person who would be expected to at least remain silent and not disruptive.
Right.
Dr. Whitaker?
But in our schools, the pledge comes over the intercom anyway.
Right.
So the adult would have the option
So they have the same
stand
options
or
as anyone
not
else.
stand. Yeah.
I just want to be clear that we understand what's going on and what the expectations are, because you can have somebody that is a military person walking through the school at the time the announcements are going on, and we have a teacher that's not standing, or we have a teacher that's not doing it, and then it becomes, well, why can't we make them, and how come they're not? And so I just want us to be clear on what the expectation is of our staff and of our students.
Can't compel
May I?
someone to.
Sir?
I researched this for the student, and I went back to this Board of Education decision in 1943, which is in the middle of World War II.
Which is odd, yes.
You really would have thought if there was any time that they required anyone to pledge their allegiance, it would be while you're in the middle of a war for your actual existential existence. This quote, I find this very enlightening. I hope it doesn't bother any of you. To believe that patriotism will not flourish if patriotic ceremonies are voluntary and spontaneous instead of a compulsory routine is to make an unflattering estimate of the appeal of our institutions to free minds. We have intellectual individualism, but freedom to differ is not limited to things that do not matter much. That would be a mere shadow of freedom. The test of its substance is the right to differ as to things that touch the heart of the existing order. And I thought that was pretty persuasive language. That's why they ruled that way.
Ms. Williams, did you want to make a
Well,
comment?
I was simply going to say, they still do not lose their constitutional rights.
Right.
No.
For teachers, so.
But I wanted it asked with a legal opinion so that it's not
Arbitrary.
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
And I did get a request from a student asking me that question, would he have to stand?
Right.
And I told him, yeah.
It can't be disruptive.
Right.
I want him to, but
It can't be.
you can't make
Not
him.
be disruptive.
Yeah.
That's clear.
Okay, item 3.11, any subcommittee reports tonight?
Well, before we go to that, I guess this may be under board member comments instead of,
Subcommittee?
because I know we do have an OPEB meeting coming up in
23rd.
23rd. And we had discussed talking with our finance people about the possibility of increasing the stipend for the retirees. Because I don't think they've been increased since 2004. And we are overfunded with our OPEB account. So we had talked about that. We can discuss it more at our meeting, but I just wanted to get a feel from the board members. Were you all in agreement with that? Because we would have to, I think we do have to bring it back
Right.
for a vote. If you all think we should look into it. Karen, if you retire early until 65, you get $2,500 a year stipend. That's the current amount. And we were looking at
Increasing it.
it.
The trustees would then bring the recommendation back to the board, which we do in November. Yes.
Because we cannot, and that's been the ongoing conversations with the city. We cannot use it for anything else except the employee retirement benefit.
Mr. Lamb?
And I would assume that number, the 2,500 per year, was probably based upon the economics and so forth
Right, at the
of
time.
2004.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. I mean, personally, I would like to see the data and so forth to see what that number would be in 2017. You know, for sure, to see how far off we are. You know.
We discussed it at our finance meeting, and Ms. Dortch is going to bring us up to date on the 23rd when the trustees meet with the Wells Fargo. So we will then bring you a recommendation in November. Okay? Yes.
Is there a way that we can put into the language that, a raise be given at least or an increase be given in the OPEB every year to 2 years to keep up with cost of living? I mean, because everything else goes up but paychecks. And especially with like a COLA, So, I mean, if there's a way that, and even if we tie it to us getting raises, that they get raises, but if there's the language that we can put in there to make sure, or is it something that doesn't need a general percentage, it just needs a review of what the actual dollars are?
I would preliminarily caution that right now. And we'll talk about this more first within the OPEB committee meeting to talk about our OPEB liability and where the actuaries see that at. So I think that will bring more color to it. But without that information present, I wouldn't want to go too much into it. But I would just caution it.
Okay.
But we'll bring back complete information.
Okay. Any more board comments or concerns?
Well, I'm trying. Did anyone else receive a letter about student uniforms?
Yes.
We just
Everybody?
Everybody
Yeah.
did.
Okay. Well, when I first got on the board, that was one of my first recommendations about the uniforms. And it sounds like they're doing this petition with signatures, and I mean, it sounds well thought out. They're getting the sororities, fraternities, different groups to even help pay for the purchase of those students that would not have them. Of course, I like the idea. I don't know how other board members feel, but I suppose they're going to present something to us with a report, or should we have an ad hoc committee that could look at that? Or she's saying from preschool to eighth grade or something? Preschool to 8th grade or something. It wouldn't hurt to study, I don't think. If it would bring order and discipline too to the schools, and then also it may help cut down on bullying and what kids wear, and if you don't have this particular thing, and especially with the kid, if they're talking about also helping to fund the kids that don't have the money to purchase them.
I remember Craddock Middle School did it, and so did S.H. Clark. And the parents that could not afford, I think there was an organization that helped purchase them. And they did they've done studies and research on uniforms versus non-uniforms. And I think the research ended up saying that there wasn't any statistical difference in whether they wore the uniforms or didn't wear them. And I think it just kind of over the years just faded away, and we just, because the kids want to wear the latest fashion, and they don't want to wear the uniform. They want to go out and wear what other kids wear. So anyway, it kind of died over the vines over the years. So
we've got
Dr. Brace.
we can look at Craddock. I mean, that is our own case study.
They do.
See,
They
because
wear
they,
them?
they still wear it.
Oh,
So we could get that information from them now.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that you hear that jumps out is
Over
that
there, I didn't see students in uniform.
it causes administration to have additional things to be keep up with, uniform violations. Yeah, because somebody's out of the colors, or they're wearing brand name shoes. They may have on a red shirt, but they have a polo on it, and that's the purpose behind the uniform. So, I mean, you hear it both ways, but we can study CRADA.
And one principal did say they were not in favor of them because they wouldn't be able to tell who hit whom because they all were looking alike. They can distinguish the kids, going down the hallway. That's what one said.
That's why you got cameras.
Yeah, but most of the schools, the prep schools, the schools that, are the parents and the kids do, and they require them to have uniforms, and they, they're known as some of the top schools, those prep schools. Right.
Ms. Hines and then Ms. Atkinson.
I hope I'm not going to say what you were going to say. My thing, maybe academically, there's no show of difference between uniforms, with academic performance, but I think maybe we should look at it from the point of the climate, from the environment, from uniformity, and look and see what kind of environment and climate is made with making that shift, not necessarily focusing on the academics, but actually, looking at the other pieces of the child that we sometimes forget when we focus so much on academics. So, I mean, if we want to put a committee together and look at it, because we do need to look at it from several aspects other than just how do we lay it out, but there's other aspects that need to be studied as well.
Ms. Atkinson?
Thank you. And I'm not against uniforms. I just like to look at both sides of the spectrum. In reference to the CRADOC situation, if my child goes to CRADOC, am I required to dress my child in a uniform? Is that school board sanctioned that CRADOC is the only school that's required to wear a uniform?
Yes.
So that is a school board that was approved by the school board.
That's how it began. I think it began as a pilot. I think probably when Mr. Parent, when he referenced, and it never stopped.
And then the thing, go ahead.
From what I was told, they were going to look at it at CRADOC, and then they were going to look at a high school and also elementary, expand from there. But I don't think it never moved from CRADOC. But if you go there now, you'll see the uniforms where the 7th graders are in one color and 8th graders in another.
Right. I was just wondering, was it a requirement if I was a parent and I didn't know if it was school board approved or if it was just still on the trial study basis.
I remember the evening that board was going to look at. I wasn't on the school board, but I was on the other side of the administration, and we had a lot of parents that came before that board, and a lot of them were against it because they wanted their child, and we had students to speak. They want to wear what they want to wear, and so I think Craddock took the lead, and they said, we want to do it. The parents want to do it. So they did for a number of years. And then it was Dr. Murphy at S.H. Clark, and they were funded by an organization, and all of them wore uniforms. Those are the only two. It never took off. Right. And to say that you can require a student to wear a particular uniform when the parent says, I'm not going to do it, then you send that child in a non-uniform, then you really can't do anything about it. I mean, it's got to be the parents have to say, all right, this is something we want to do, and that's what Craddock did. And it was very successful at Craddock, and it was very successful at S.H. Clark. But as far as spreading to the other schools, it never did. So, anyway.
But we can take a look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And the last item is the adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Been made and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
See you on the 26th at where?
At Hodgetown.